Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are on the planet. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Nim Grenvald. I am the technical evangelist here at Cybo's Kintone, and I am just delighted to be with you all today. First of all, if you haven't done so already, download the code and the slide deck. The slide deck you should be seeing in front of you at this moment. The code, we've dropped a link to the GitHub repo in the chat, and you can go ahead and git clone that repository. Thank you, Genji. Please make sure, if you have not done so already, to sign up for your free Kintone developer account and follow the instructions at that link over there, and then to create your free Kintone subdomain, which also we'll be going over shortly, walking you through how to do that. If at any point in time you're lost, concerned, confused, have trouble following me, maybe I'm speaking too fast, maybe I'm going too slow, please post your comments in the chat at any time. And if it's error related, if you're having trouble running anything, you can be sure to include the code and the error messages in the chat, and one of my esteemed colleagues will assist you. If you haven't already downloaded the repository, here are the instructions to do that. You're going to git clone the workshop branch. It'll be git clone -b workshop, followed by that GitHub link. If you've already downloaded the repository, you can git checkout workshop, and that'll check out your workshop branch. We're going to go into the Kintone React search bar folder, which will be created once you git clone the repository. And then you're going to npm install a package called customize uploader. And just in one sentence, what that does is it will automate the work that you do and push it up to your Kintone environment. Very handy to have. We're going to use this repository as a starting point. Would be that you've got your developer account set up. Make sure you're using Chrome or Firefox to do that, and that you allow cookies. And so you'll sign up for that developer account. Make sure you use your full name and your email, and pass the reCAPTCHA. If you are in fact a robot and you can click on that button, you win. And then create your Kintone subdomain. So what'll happen is once you've got access to a developer account, you'll be able to have your own, create your own, what we call a subdomain. You can imagine as your Kintone environment. And so you'll name it by whatever the subdomain is. It might be weekend-hacker, coffee, the numeral 4, and then life, whatever it is. Make sure that you're using alphanumeric characters and hyphens only. Hello from Kintone. I want to introduce my colleagues who are going to be with us tonight, who are going to be the people helping you out. First and foremost, Will. Will hails to us from Tokyo, Japan. Will, do you want to say a word or two?
Joining in from Japan. It's morning here, so quite active today. I'm excited to meet you all.
Will leads our Kintone developer program, and he's great. He's going to be a great asset for you all. I also want to introduce Genji, our developer advocate, also located in Tokyo, Japan. Genji, a few words?
Thank you for joining, and I hope you like the workshop.
And finally, Sean, our newest member of the team. Sean, that is a really cool photo of you.
Thank you. It's my only cool photo.
Do you have does it come with like a cool story?
Nope. I was riding a boat and there was a hat. So
the photo may be cool, but he looks hot in that. Yeah.
He looks like a guy you don't want to mess with.
So I'm new here to working in Cybo's Japan with Will and Genji, and I'm actually rather new to Kintone as well. So actually, I'm excited to be learning with you guys as well. You know, I'll be learning a lot from this workshop as well.
Folks, if you have any difficult questions, make sure you direct them at Sean first. We'll put him through a trial by fire. I'm confident that he'll succeed. And Sean, thanks for playing with us today.
Yeah, it's my job.
Yeah, it's your job, and you're
It
playing
is your
with us,
job.
so it's fine. Today, we're going to build a React search bar that queries a database. So what we're going to make today is we're going to use Kintone to create a list of records. Kintone is going to act as a web database sitting behind our backend, and it'll actually act as a front end as well. We're going to be uploading. We're going to be creating some React code that will render a search bar, and then as we type in characters into that search bar, we will be filtering from that list of records that we have sitting in our database. So this workshop today has 3 segments. The first is our project setup, and we're in the middle of that. We're talking about installing dependencies, configuring the settings, setting the environment variables, running the scripts, all of that, brick and mortar stuff. Then we're going to talk about Kintone, what it is, how it works. We're going to spin up some what we call apps, which you can imagine as a spreadsheet or a table in a database on Kintone. And then we're going to demo Kintone's custom view feature, which is what we use to run. It's basically like a canvas for running client-side code, and we can essentially treat it like a canvas for any kind of front end code. And then we'll dive into the search bar aspect of the build. We're going to live code some things together, and we'll build that search bar in React. Talk about components and state and data flow in React, all that fun stuff. Folks, make sure that you're running recent versions of Node and NPM. You'll do that. You'll make those checks by typing into your terminal node-v and npm-v. Make sure that your Node version is higher than 10.16 and that your NPM version is higher than 5.6. NPM just released version like 8.3, something like that. And if you're having trouble with node.js, we've got some information on how to set that up. The repository that should already be cloned on your machine. Let me talk a little bit about that directory structure. Okay, so we've got React Kintone search bar, something like that, and then here are the most important parts of this repository today. There's a source folder. In that source folder, this is where we will be playing with our code. We've got an HTML file and a CSS file, and this will be untouched. We have an index.js file. This is the entry point for our code. So we will be touching this, as well as inside of a components folder, there are 2 JavaScript files, ResultList.js and SearchBar.js. These are each React components. And then there is a file called getRecords.js, which handles the API calls to Kintone. I also want to touch on your .env file. .env, it's a .env. I will be pronouncing it .env. That file is going to hold your environmental variables, which we will soon type in. And then we've got your customize-manifest.json, and this is what your that npm package that I had asked you to download, customize uploader, will be using this package to drive its automation. The files that are starred are going to be the ones that we will touch today. Don't worry about anything else. Just know that it's there. And if you have any questions about why it's there, if we've got some time at the end, I'm happy to answer those questions and do like a real deep dive on like why everything looks the way that it does. Okay, let's talk about Kintone. So the reason why I want to talk about Kintone is because, aside from the fact that we all work for a company that sells a product called Kintone, and that might have something to do with why we're all on the line here today. It's a tool that you're going to be using today. You should know how to use what this tool is for, how you use it, and why. So Kintone is a no-code, low-code platform. it enables teams to easily share and collaborate on their data efficiently. So you may have heard of other no-code platforms in the past or other low-code platforms in the past. Ours is certainly not the only one. There's a large industry of no-code and low-code platforms. What's special about Kintone, though, is the way that we focus on teamwork and collaboration. So if you're like many knowledge workers, you're working with your data in a variety of different places. Maybe it's in a database, maybe it's in Excel spreadsheets, maybe it's in Visual Studio Code, and maybe then separate from that, you've got conversations that are happening about that data. Could be happening over email, in Jira, over text messages, in voicemail, if anybody still uses that, or if you're hip to Signal, then you're going to be using encrypted and free app Signal. The issue is that all of these different tools are missing unified communication. The data and the conversations about the data are not in the same place, and that makes the experience of knowledge work a pain. Looking for stuff hurts. It takes time. You don't know where things are. You lose track of things. You miss your focus. But wouldn't it be great if you could have a way to have the data and the conversations about the data all in one place, so that when somebody's communicating with you, you're dropped right into the context and don't really need to spend much, if any, time at all looking for the various things you need to look for to come up with coherent answers to questions, or you get answers to your questions faster because people have everything at their fingertips. That's one of the key pieces of Kintone that we consider to be its magic, that teams collaborate more effectively together, especially in an operations environment. Like whatever like day-to-day business operations are, could be sales, CRM, expense reporting, marketing, content pipeline, whatever. Now, all of those examples that I just gave you, they feature workflows, right? There's an expense report workflow. You buy something, you hand in a receipt, you hand in an expense report, it gets approved, or it gets escalated for somebody else's approval, depending on if there's a cost that's higher than a certain threshold. Or if you're in a marketing content pipeline and there's a piece of content that moves through a particular kind of flow, it goes through various stages of approval from various different people, groups, or departments. Legal document review is another example, hiring process. So Kintone has a workflow feature that lets you make sure that the right people are seeing the right thing at the right time. And it's a no-code, low-code platform, so you can build, again, what we call apps quickly and easily. You can imagine a powerful online table where data is stored in records. That's an app. And you build apps with a drag and drop interface, no coding required. There's a canvas on the right-hand side of the page. There's a palette on the left-hand side of the page. And you drag and drop fields from the palette onto the canvas, and then you can edit the fields like we're seeing over here in an easily configurable environment. Apps, although they're very easy to build, they have a lot of power underneath them, because you can pretty much anything that you can touch in Kintone, you can customize with uploaded client-side executable JavaScript. And so this is a really neat situation and that we've created, which is that anyone can create apps they need without code, right? If you're allergic to technology or you're close to it, something is now possible that wasn't possible before. That's a really huge shift for people who are just not savvy at tech. But that's not you folks. What you folks can do is use this powerful under the hood JavaScript client-side executable capabilities to enhance the apps that other people build. What that lets you do is focus on the harder problems. There's always so much to do, right? But if we could give like the easy problems for people to solve on their own, and then we're left with the harder problems, makes our job, first of all, more interesting, and also justifies our contribution. Ultimately, what we're looking to do over here is fulfill the promise of groupware. Now, when I talk about groupware, I want you to imagine like collaborative software that helps teams work better together wherever they are. And the promise of groupware is that you can share meaningful insights about your data quickly, so that that those insights become operationalized more quickly. How do developers contribute to something like this? So developers, software engineers, folks like you and me, we can build a command center. You can imagine a place where you've got like a dashboard that hooks into various other third-party web applications, and is your like single source of truth. You can imagine like a layer for collaboration that sits on top of your data that shows you what you want to land on and give you a higher level of what's going on. All your data is in one place. And for that to happen, we need developers to build these third-party pipelines. Developers can also build enhancements, which are to develop these client-side JavaScript customizations and then package them up as what we call extensions. You can imagine that as like a Chrome extension, for example. And then you can build and share those extensions. Inside of Kintone, there's a lot of room to play if you're a developer. There's a JavaScript API. So this is the API that gets run client side. There's a REST API, API tokens, which will enhance the security of your data if you're calling that data programmatically. Webhooks, which allow you to push your data payloads out from Kintone into other third-party endpoints based on specific triggers that are hit in the GUI. Plugins/extensions, this is what I was just talking about. You can imagine like Chrome extensions, but for Kintone, in the Kintone environment. And then JavaScript, CSS, HTML customizations, and very precise and granular permission controls to make sure that the right people are seeing the right thing at the right time. So when I say creating a custom look and feel, I'm dead serious. Anything go. I mean, when I said it's a blank canvas, so what you're seeing are two custom views. We're going to be playing with custom views today. And on the left-hand side, you see a particular way of visualizing data in what I believe is called a bubble chart. And in the second, we see someone, Will, has built Space Invaders inside of Kintone using a custom view. This Space Invaders example is so cool because it just shows you how much freedom you have in creating in this white space over here. So if you're looking to level up your skill sets, Kintone can be useful for self-learning in a few ways. One, it can help you learn new JavaScript tricks. You can use it to contribute your learning to tech blogs, and you can share your projects with the community. If you're looking to use Kintone to generate revenue, you can create and sell Kintone extensions, consult with firms on achieving business goals, and develop Kintone customizations for customers. And I invite you to reach out to me, our Kintone technical evangelist, if you have any kind of ideas or plans to use Kintone for creating revenue. I'm happy to have a longer conversation with you about that and what that might look like. Let's keep moving. Please check your email. This is, again, a notice if you have not created your Kintone subdomain, this is going to be your place to do that. You'll go into that email, you'll activate your subdomain, and then you're going to create the initial password. I'm going to assume at this point that you've already done this step. If you haven't, don't worry. If you have any questions with this, drop them in the chat. And we'll make sure somebody assists you. If you have not received the email at this point, also drop that in the chat. When you log into Kintone, the first page that you see after you log in is going to be a page that's available for administrators or a way to click directly into your Kintone environment. You're going to click on that Kintone button, and you'll be taken to our portal. So this is your portal screen. So on this screen, this is the canvas, the blank canvas that allows that you will essentially use as a dashboard in a fully featured Kintone environment to help you and your team see what needs your, your regular attention, what needs your critical attention, what notifications have come up for you, what items are in your workflow. This is the place where you'll see all of that. But in this case, it's a blank canvas, and that's what we expect because we just spun up a brand new subdomain and no work has been done over here. We're going to create our first Kintone app. Again, you can imagine an app as a table in a database or a spreadsheet in a workbook. You'll click on this plus sign right over here, and you'll be taken to a page where you can create apps. This time, we're going to create apps from scratch. We're going to use that palette and that canvas like I was talking about. And so click on Create App from Scratch, and the first page you'll come to will look like this. This is the app settings for your new app, and we're going to make a few changes over here. So first, you'll see it says New App. You're going to replace it with your app's title. In this case, we're going to be doing a Manga database. So MangaDB is going to be the title of your new app. Following that, you're going to drag and drop fields from the palette on the left-hand side of the page onto this blank canvas. You're going to drag and drop two text fields, text and text, right next to each other. And what we're going to do at this point is we will hover over the first left-hand most text text box, and there will be a gear wheel on the right-hand side of that field, top right-hand side. You'll see a drop-down menu, a drop-down in context menu, and one of the options will be settings. Click on that. And what we're going to do is we're going to make two changes over here. The first one is going to change this to an author. And so the name is going to not be text anymore. It will be author. And then at the bottom, you'll see there's a setting called field code. Now, we can name as many fields as we want author, but ultimately there needs to be something on the back end that's going to uniquely differentiate among our text boxes and our various other Kintone fields. And that's what this field code is. This field code is the unique identifier for that field. We're going to want it to say author, this time all in lowercase. So make sure that this field code is correct, okay? Because if it's not, our code may break later. In fact, it almost certainly will, because our code will be referenced. It will need to reference pushing data into these fields, and it will use the field code to reference that. So the field code that we have in our VS Code will need to match what we've got over here. So author, all lowercase, and then hit save. And then we're going to do the same thing for title. So we're going to have two fields, title and author. We just did author. We're going to do title next. So we'll have that name. The name of the field will be title with a capital T, and the field code will be title with a lowercase t. With that done, if you followed my instructions the way that I said them right now, then actually you'll have an author field on the left and a title field on the right. Not a problem. Drag and drop one to the other side of the other, and we can just switch them. We can switch those fields around. You could have title on the left and author on the right. Ultimately, it's not going to matter for the project that we're doing today, but to understand why we've got one and the other, you can just drag and drop. Following that, let me just get a quick raise hands. If you've completed this step and are ready to move to the next step, please raise your electronic hand. Okay, great. Crystal, Jeremiah, thank you. Beneath, thank you. Satinder, Sean, thank you. Ilshin, Elias, terrific. Let's keep going. You'll click now on views. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a new view. Click on the plus sign over here to add a new view. And we're going to click on custom view. You'll see there are 3 radio buttons over here. There's list view, calendar view, and custom view. Please click on custom view, okay? And then you're going to want to click on, make sure it says both, make sure the option, the radio button that is selected says both desktop and mobile optimized views. And you'll see there's a view ID here. This is an entirely numeric string, and you're going to need this number. Everyone's is going to be different. you need yours. Make sure you've copied it somewhere and you've kept it somewhere safe. Also make sure that the enable pagination that the enable pagination checkbox is checked. And then in the HTML code, now you can put any HTML over here. And then we can upload JavaScript and CSS later. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to set up a div that is going to be a root element for our React code. What's neat about this is basically we're offloading the, we're offloading the creation and management of our HTML entirely to our React source code. We don't need to have the code in multiple places. Over here, it's pretty much the stub. Div ID root. So now we can then reference that div ID root in our React code, and everything, all of our React code is going to hang off of this div. Once you've done that, please hit save on the top left part of the screen. Top left part of the screen, there's a blue save button. Hit save. And then, and this is important, what we've done before, what we've done hitting save, you can imagine this as like committing a change. Okay. We've committed a change, but now we need to, what you can imagine, like we're pushing to production. Okay. We're moving away from our staging environment and we are now pushing to production, and we do that by hitting activate app. Okay. If you do not hit activate app, you will not, we can help you find your app, but it'll be hard to find, especially since this is your first time around the platform. All you need to know is, click on that activate app button, and you'll be able to next be taken to your MongoDB app. This is a brand new app. Remember, an app is like a spreadsheet in a workbook or a table in a database, so you should expect to see all of the data that you have in there in a list form. Conveniently enough, that's exactly what we see, a list form with all of the data that we have in there, which is no data. This is exactly what we would expect. We're going to create our first record, and we do that by hitting the plus sign. Before we go on, I'm going to take another quick check. Please raise your hand electronically to make sure you're tracking along with me. So far, we've created our form with that form builder on the canvas. We've created our custom view. We've copied the unique ID of our custom view, and we've saved that, and we've activated the apps. Jeremiah, Sean, very good. John, terrific. Terrific, terrific. Ilshin, Crystal. Okay. Okay. Good. Good. If anybody's having any trouble, let me know. You can go ahead and post in the chat. Let's create our first record, and we're going to do that by clicking on this plus sign. And when you do, you'll see exactly what we would expect to see. This is a new record. It's like a form that we're filling out, and we've set up each of our forms, each of our records, to have two text boxes in them, one for title and one for author. You can put any title or author in there that you want. Genji is a huge manga fan, so inevitably all of our workshops that he does involve us doing some kind of like manga entries. Unfortunately, I know virtually nothing about manga. So I'll just put in like the books and authors, my favorite books and authors. You can do whatever you'd like, but just a title and an author will be sufficient for our purposes today. And then hit the save button. Okay, when you do, you'll be taken to this new record. Okay, and we've got two text boxes in this new record. If you click on this blue MongoDB link, we'll go back to that list view. So go ahead and click on that thumbnail. Sorry, that breadcrumb is what I meant, that breadcrumb. And you'll be taken back to MongoDB right over here, our list of records. Now, please take the next 2-3 minutes and create somewhere between 2 to 5 more records. We've set up our Kintone environment for our purposes. Now what we want to do is we want to connect our Kintone subdomain. we're going to do a few things. So we're going to connect. So we'll connect our Kintone subdomain. We're going to do that by playing with the environmental variables. Okay, and then we're going to npm run start in our terminal, and we're going to walk through the existing behavior, learn how React works, and we're going to do all of that starting now. So things are going to get a lot more interesting. Okay. So you should all see my screen at this point, and I've got Kintone React search bar that's up and running. And you'll see I've got my directory structure over here. The directory, the part of the directory that I'm most interested in at the moment is .env.example. Okay. Here's what we need to know about environmental variables. Okay. There's stuff that you want private. Okay. That is like not that like your code will use, but doesn't necessarily like quote unquote belong to your code. Belong to your code. So for example, you'll see over here that I've got variables like the URL for my subdomain and my Kintone username and my Kintone password, as well as the custom, that unique ID of my custom view. All of these for each one of us is going to be different. And I don't want this information up in GitHub because this is private information. So I've got to have some way of like holding my private information locally on my machine, preventing it from being accidentally uploaded to GitHub, and ideally automatically like getting pushed into my code at just the right places so that I don't have to like manually deal with any of these essentially background settings. When we say environmental variables, you can imagine like background settings configuration, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I've got this .env.example file. Okay, and our code is set up such that this is a template that our code looks for to make and then make sure that our actual environmental variable file will match the template over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it .env. .env. This .env file is our actual environmental variables file. This example file is what will get pushed to GitHub in lieu of our secret information. Our secret information is git ignored so that it will stay on our machine. What we're going to want to do over here, what you will want to do at this point, and everybody will be different, is you want to put your base URL, your username, your password, and your view ID for for your Kintone login information. So your base URL will be like your subdomain.kintone.com. For me, for example, it's going to be a subdomain called dev events, right? Yours will be different over here, okay? Your Kintone username, mine is going to be developer. Yours will be different. And then you'll put in your password and then your view ID. So my view ID, this is going to be my view ID, okay? Okay, and once you've filled that out, let's talk about configuring your customize uploader. So what I'd like you to do now is going to the dest folder, within E. And you'll see that there's a few items over here that are set up to basically that customize uploader package is going to refer to this file to know where to push our JavaScript file that we've created once we've built it from our source. The important thing for you to know is this app this app number. So each one of our apps has a unique number that's incremented by 1 every time we create a new app. So if this is your first Kintone experience, and this is the first time that you've spun up an app in your Kintone environment, that number for you will probably be the number 1. I say probably because maybe you've used Kintone before and forgot about it. In any case, that's okay. Let me show you where you would go to find out what that number is. Okay, inside your Kintone environment. Okay. That in the place where you can see your list of records, in your URL, got your subdomain.kintone.com/k/, and then there's a number. That's the number you want, -30. Yours will probably be something else. And then you'll save this file. So after we've modified that customized manifest.json, now let's npm run start. There we go. So what's happening over here? We have a script file that is making magic happen behind the scenes. What kind of magic is happening? Well, we're compiling our code into like a build file. That build file may or may not be human readable. It could be machine readable. And that's the file that gets uploaded to Kintone with the environment variables that we have already, that we've preset in that .env file. And we're using a tool called Webpack to basically translate the code that we are writing in using React into machine readable JavaScript. There's some what's called syntactic sugar. There's some like code conventions and notations that we use that are not strictly JavaScript and will not compile to JavaScript by default. There's some magic happening behind the scenes with a tool called Babel. Babel is a transpiler. What it does is it takes our React code or like whatever we're using for conventions and syntactic sugar, and it turns it into that machine readable build file, and then customized uploader takes that machine readable build file, which you can find over here in dist, and it'll automatically push it up. We don't ever need to touch that. That'll be handled for us. I'm getting npm run upload failed. Oh, great. You're going to try so Satinder, it sounds like you might have trouble in one of 2 places. Satinder, one of those places may be in your customized manifest.json file, where perhaps your app number is not correct. So that might be the first place to look. Make sure that the number matches the number in your URL for your Kintone app. Yours, if this is your first Kintone app in this environment, will be the number 1. That's the first place to look. The second place to look is in your .env file, okay? So you'll want this to be http:// whatever your subdomain is, .kintone.com. Your username will be whatever the username is for that you have to log in. Your password will be whatever the password is, and your view ID, your view ID will be whatever the number is of that ID. Those are your likely culprits, Satinder. Actually, we run sounds like a Russian nesting doll of npm scripts. We run start runs upload and dev runs build. You're getting an education in how to create npm scripts to run in the background. Well, great, thank you. Got behind. Where is the username? So whatever that one is, that's your username. Jeremiah, where do I find the view ID? No problem. Jeremiah, looking at my screen, follow along with me right now. We are in the app. There's a list of records, okay? And we're going to click on this gear wheel. This gear wheel is going to take us to our app settings, and we'll click on views. Then there's a custom view. It'll say what it might say for you, view 1, view and then the numeral 1. That's fine. Edit. Here's what you need. Here's the important part. Okay. Check to make sure that it's a custom view, and then grab this view ID right over here. Mine is 5524732. Yours probably not that same number. That's your view ID, okay, Jeremiah? Folks, we're gonna start moving. We're gonna move into React at this point, and we're gonna talk about the behavior that's happening in React. What I'd like. So what are we going to be doing today? Well, we are creating a search bar functionality over here. So what we want to do is we want to our top level behavior is basically going to be get my results or get my list of records. Remember, you guys earlier today you created between 2 and 5 records. Get those records, hold them, copy them, and then use and then filter them and present the list of filtered records based on the characters that I'm putting in the search bar. Okay. And in fact, let me say a note about that search bar, okay? If you've npm run started and your settings have been deployed, you should be able to go into Kintone, into your custom view, and you should see now that things are looking a little bit different than they were a few moments ago, right? They're looking different because we've uploaded, because as soon as we npm run started, we uploaded some JavaScript automatically, and that JavaScript featured a search bar that if we start to type in things, I think it was Joseph Heller or Demon Slayer or something when I sampled data over here, nothing was showing up. Okay, that's because we're gonna fill in the blanks over here in this code. Ultimately, what we want, have our full list of records shown, and then as we type in characters, we want all of the mismatches to disappear, so that we are left with our matches. So how do we do that? Okay, well, let's take a look at what's going on in our index.js. This is the first place where we are our code begins. And you'll see there's a few things that are happening over here. Okay, so first we are importing these React packages, and then these two functions called useState and useEffect. These are functions that React uses to create some automagic handling of the rendering and the state. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's okay. We'll come back to that in a little bit. We'll import some CSS to make things look pretty. And then we have some get records behavior already preset. Okay, so we don't have to build anything that handles our API call this evening. We've done that for you. What's happening is there's going to be some function in our front end that is going to make a call to the Kintone backend and retrieve all of our records. Okay. Then we also are importing these result list and search bar components. Now in React, you can imagine a component as like a conveniently scoped place for where action happens in your front end. These things called HTML elements, right? A div is an HTML element. An A is an HTML element, like an anchor tag. A span is an HTML element. And React lets us create HTML elements that, from our perspective, seem to look and feel like HTML elements with attributes, but are actually what's happening is React behind the scenes is doing some magic with functions to handle the presentation and updating of those pretend HTML elements, which are actually React components, which are actually JavaScript functions, JavaScript classes, which are JavaScript functions. We don't need to know all of that behind the scenes, although, I mean, I for one, 100% support having a deep fundamental understanding of the material. All we need to know for the moment is we've got two of these components. One is scoped to handle our search bar, and the other is like gonna be the container for all of our results. Now, something unusual is about to happen, which is, can anyone tell me what's happening on line 15? What is the name of this functional behavior in JavaScript? It starts on line 15, and actually it looks on line 73, it finishes like this. What is this called? Any takers? Folks, this is called an immediately invoked function expression. And what happens is, it's a bunch of code that as soon as it's being read, it's executed. The way that you organize your code typically in a React project is each file is its own module. And each file you import functions from other modules, and you export you expose certain parts of your code to be used in other files. And so you can imagine this set of files as a web that starts at an entry point, and then as we import certain things, we are pulling from other parts of the web, and we export certain things, and then other parts of the web can use those exported modules. And that's a way of handling scope for each file, because we want to keep the global scope clean. We don't want to have any accidental namespace collisions. So each file is like scoped on its own, with the only exceptions being whatever has been exported. Whatever has been exported is fair game to import in your code. And that's how scope typically gets handled in a React project with many files. When we upload our file to Kintone, our best practice is to upload an immediately invoked function expression to make sure that all of the code that's in this function remains locally scoped. It doesn't bleed out of this iffy. So the way that we've set up the code today is we've included this function expression, this immediately invoked function expression in here, as a way of locally scoping all of this information. And when you use Kintone, whether or not you use React, you'll typically, the files that you upload will be scoped using this syntax. But typically you won't see this in a React project. So we're using script. We have a version over here that we can increment as we make changes. Over here, you'll see that we are calling out our custom view ID that we've previously defined. Okay, and then there's something here called Kintone events on. So this is an event handler. There's a hook that's getting triggered on the Kintone side whenever we are presented with a list, with the page that holds our record list. When we show our index of records in an app, we're going to use the app.record.index.show event. That's what this is. This is just the name of an event that gets emitted by a Kintone event handler. And there's some callback that happens, and we can pass in an event object that we can hook some behavior into. This error message over here tells us if we're not currently on the view ID in our custom view. We'll see a log in the console. And then let's get into the meat and potatoes. So we've got this function, this app, okay? And what's happening is we've got these two buckets of state. One of the great benefits of React is that React lets us handle state easily. What I mean by handle state easily is that React is basically touching two things. It's touching the data, and it's touching the presentation of your front end. And what React allows you to do is to automate the updating of your front end when data changes. It does that by leveraging this state function. And what we do is actually we create a state function for every chunk of data that we want to be observing separately. So we want to observe the list of items that we have, and we also want to observe the list of our search results. Since our search results might change over time, in our list items, we want that, like, we want to basically be able to handle waiting, like, before we retrieve our results from the API call, and then after we retrieve our results from the API. Then we've got this handleChange function stub that's currently not doing anything. But what we're going to have it do is something when our search bar changes. What do I mean by when our search bar changes? When we type characters into the search bar, some change is going to get handled. That's going to be dealt with over here. And then we have something called our use effect hook. A use effect is a way of pushing data into our state when updates happen. So when a page gets updated, a use effect function will be automatically triggered. And what we've done is we've said when the page loads, immediately call this get records function, and then take the result of those records, remember those 2 to 5 records that you've created, push that result into your state of your list, and then push it into your search results as well. So this is going to update our state, both of our states. You'll see over here, what we are returning doesn't look like JavaScript at all. This is syntactic sugar called JSX, and this is one of the advantages of working with React, is that it lets us code in not JavaScript, but things that look like HTML, so that we can code easier. So this is a snippet of code. There's a div in here, class name app. What you'll notice is that that app corresponds with this function app. Okay. And we've got 2 elements in here. There's a search bar element, sorry, a search bar component. They're not elements. They're like fake HTML elements, but they're actually React components. And result list component. And you'll see something that looks a lot like an HTML attribute, but again, it's not, because this is not an HTML element. This is something called a prop. Props are ways of passing data around to your components in React. And what basically, the way React works is that React basically makes your data flow predictable. And the way that it does that is it enforces certain data flows. What do I mean by that? If you had a very sophisticated web application, things might change over here, things might change over there, and then there's like side effects from these changes, and suddenly we are in a whole world of a mess trying to keep track of what's changing and what are the consequences of those things changing, and are there like secondary, like is there like clashes that happen when 2 things are changed. So things can get complicated. Do we have race conditions? React helps make that simpler by enforcing a particular way data flow happens. Data flows from parent component to child component. So you'll see we have over here a component. Well, this doesn't actually look like a component, but it is a component. This is our app component. Right? And it has child components in it. A search bar component and a result list component are children of the app component, and search bar and result list are siblings to each other. What's going to happen is when the search bar, when we input characters into search bar, result list changes. So we need some way of having changes in the state of the search bar impact changes in the state of the result list. because they can't talk to each other directly. So they're going to do that by way of props. I've got this component. This component holds my source of truth for a certain pool, for a certain bucket of data. That source of truth for a certain bucket of data, I call that state. I've got multiple buckets of data. So I have multiple states that I'm managing. Those states inform, when those states change, React will automatically update the related components. And it will pass down the updated state to the child components if the child components have that state as their props. So you see I've got search results that get passed down as props over here. When the search results state changes, then the result list prop called search results will get passed in to the result list component, and then I'll be able to do stuff with search results. So we should expect that the search bar, that whatever we're doing over here should be handling basically, if I'm typing in some kind of characters, then the state should be updated in some way. And the result list component should say something like, well, you know, given my updated list of my updated list of results, render the updated list. And that's it. That's it, actually. So some way of handling the change in my search bar component, some way of rendering my results, and some way of making my input element reactified so that React can follow along inside of that input element and monitor the characters that are being put in there, because each character change will be a change in state. No, actually, let's start with our result list. I think that'll be the easiest. We want to present our search results over here. And we want to present them as a list, right? They're a result list. So I'm going to have in here some kind of an unordered list, right? A list of results. And each result is going to be a list item. So far, so good. But the list of items changes based on whatever I've put in my search results. So I need a way of taking my search results and showing. I need a way of taking my already filtered search results. The filtering will happen elsewhere. This is just showing the results that I've got, showing those search results in the particular way that I want. Well, the particular way that I want is going to be something like, the title written by the author. Okay, and then for however many titles they're going to want, it's going to look something like this. And I want that for each record. And what I can actually do is I can create a function over here that'll take my array of search results, and each one of my search results is probably going to be an object. It's an object. My search results are an array of objects. Okay. Each result is going to have a title key and an author key. And that result gets passed down through props. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to take this props object that got passed down, and it's got a key on it called search results. And I'm going to map that array of objects so that for each record in that array of objects. Each object is a record, right? I'm going to return something that looks like this. Now you might be wondering, how can I return HTML? And this is where I wave my hands and go, React is making this magic happen. Now, it's not just any title, it's a record title. It's not just any author, it's a record.author. These are specific key value pairs that are picked off of this record from the search results array of objects. Okay? And I'm going to make a few tweaks over here. Let's have this be in bold. Let's give it a class name called title bold. And actually, we want the title to be that. Okay. And then there's another thing we want to do with React, which is we want to have React requires that we, for each list item in a list, that we feature a unique key. This unique key is actually going to be given by our record number. Each Kintone record we have has a unique record number associated with it. We're going to save this. And we have some open questions. So if you're wondering, what the F does this object look like? How did I get it in the first place? And where is it coming from that I'm now passing it down somewhere? If all of those three questions remain unanswered for you, you're exactly where you should be. We're going to roll this back. And what I want to point out is that in the getRecords JavaScript function, we have handled an API call for you. And we're getting back an object. For each record is an object. It's going to have these key value pairs in it: unique key, author, and title. And that's what we just used. So something needs to trigger this get call. And then we've got this array of objects that result list will use pending the filtering from the search result. So let's handle that search result stuff. So here's what we want to do next, okay? We want to think about how search bar changes happen. Like, how do we get, so we've fetched these records, and then we've pushed them into the set list items. We've pushed them into this state, and we've in both buckets. Now you might be wondering how state works in React. Why do I have this? What is this 2-item array that's going on? How does it turn into, like, what's going on over here? There's a little bit of ES6 syntax going on, but basically I've got each one of these 2-item arrays has my data in it, as well as a function that I push the data into that triggers the update of the state. And what I have over here in use state, this is pushing an initial value into the state. So my search results are initially empty. My list items are initially filled with a string that says now loading. When I load the page, the use effect hook gets triggered. I get the records, and then I use these 2 state updating functions to update the state. So list items will now be my results. Search results will now be my results. Now I want to filter my search results so that they have something to do with that I want to be able to take these initial search results and filter them based on what I'm putting in my search bar. So let's let the filtered results equal to the list items. So this is now my list of records, and I'm going to filter them. So for each record, I'm evaluating whether the title includes the value of my input element, that form element, that value of my input element, whether it includes that string. That's what this filter is, right? I type in a bunch of characters, and something is matching those characters in the input element against my list of records. If true, then those results are going to be landing in this array. And from there, I'm going to update my state with the new results. That's it. That's my filtering behavior. Now let's go to our search bar. Genji, let me tag you in on this, okay? So here I've got my input. This is an HTML element. It's an input element, and it has attributes to it. It's got a whole bunch of attributes to it. Genji, could you walk us through why it has many of the attributes it has, like class name and type and ID and placeholder and name? And then I can talk about the onChange.
Class name, we're going to set it to search bar in order to trigger the CSS that we want. We're setting type to text since we are requesting text input for our from our user. We're doing header search. This is for labeling. We have an invisible text up above, just providing for like accessibility. Placeholder text, that's the message that it's in the search bar that has no impact other than to help the user input. The name we're putting in search bar for manga titles. This is us. And then for onChange, we're grabbing from the props handleChange status.
Genji, I got a lightning round for you. Why are we passing the handleChange function down as a prop from the parent component to this child component? And it would help if we actually had this app separated out as a component, which we don't this time. But I want you to imagine that app is actually a parent component, okay? And the parent component is holding the state of its sibling, of its child components. And there are two child components. They are siblings of each other. And updates in one influence the rendering of data in its sibling component. Now, the parent is the one that's adjudicating the updating, basically, because the parent is the one that's holding the state of both. And that state gets passed down as props, right? So the result list is a little bit easier to understand, right? Somewhere, somehow, the list item state gets updated in the parent component. That parent component updates the props get passed down to the child uses the props inside of its rendering, it re-renders with the updated props, and we see a new list. In the other component, the search bar component, right, there's something that's happening where we've reactified just a regular HTML input element. Okay, and we've reactified it with an on-change event. Okay, it's a React. It's
reactive.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember if that on-change event is a React feature or if it's hooking into to the typical on-change attribute. I think what's happening is it's hooking into the typical on-change attribute, and but it's handing down a function called handleChange, but handleChange is set over here. The reason why handleChange is set over here in the parent component is because inside of that function scope, we are updating the state inside of the parent component. So that handleChange behavior needs to sit inside of the parent component, but be passed down into the child because it will be executed inside of that child component. But when it is executed inside of the child component, it is executing a state update of the parent component inside of the parent component. So there's no data that's getting passed from child to parent. The function gets passed down from parent to child, but the function that's getting passed down from parent to child demands a state update of the parent inside the parent. You got that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in short, all the action is happening in the parent. It's just the children need a reference to what action am I supposed to take.
Exactly. Or what data should I be updating and re-rendering inside of what components? The value to be typed in from the user, is it value binding? No, there's no, I don't think that there's values that are being bound from the user. Each time the user types in a string, every time the user types in a character. Let me show you what this looks like, okay? So here I am. I've got a few nice features to my search bar so that it looks pretty and that it's accessible and that it has this placeholder called search manga titles. And I have 4 records over here, okay? I'm gonna type in a value, B, okay? So what just happened behind the scenes? I typed in a value B, the character B, inside of search bar, right? Because I typed in anything, an on-change event got propagated. On-change is an attribute that calls a function. The function was the handleChange function that was passed down from the parent component into the search bar. So if we look at the parent component, this handleChange event took an event, which is the native browser event object for the input element change. And we picked off the string that I typed in, which in this case is the letter B as in boy. And what we're doing is we're lowercasing it, and we're checking it against my list of titles that I have in my state. Okay. So in my state over here, in my list item state, I've got a list of 4 records, and I'm looking, which of these titles has a B in it? I filter through my array, and only one of my results is true. I take that result and I push it into the updated state for search results. Now, with this updated search results state, those updated search results get passed down as props to the result list component, which re-renders showing my new search results, basically. So is the value binding? There's no variable that's getting bound with a value over here. It's an excellent question. Thanks for asking it. We built a search bar that rendered. We had a web database on Kintone, and we put some records in there, and then we put in a search bar, and then we are re-rendering filtered results based on the characters that we're typing in the search bar. So now, what could you do with something like this if you wanted to play with it some more, to go take it to the next level? What you could do is you could create a production build. You could run different package JSON scripts using Webpack to create a production build and push that build up to Kintone. You can link the lists to a Kintone record or a wiki page. You can add a button to clear the results. Got you. So when you say link, you mean hyperlink. Got you. So you could create a hyperlink that you could create that, like, each one of these entries actually hyperlinks to the Kintone, the details of the Kintone record. Now I'm tracking with you. You could add a button to clear the results. You could search for more than one field. So, like, not just the title, but also the author. And you can share your experience on dev.to. If you need any help, if you're stuck, you can share your code on the Kintone developer community forum or on Stack Overflow.
Nim, as was saying, we're wrapping it up, but we just want to say thank you so much. We really appreciate all your individual attention right now and just sitting through from beginning to end, or just coming when you could. So we really appreciate the audience. And so that being said, if you really enjoyed the content we went over here today, there are future workshops. I believe they're going to be conjuring up some different stuff compared to what they've been doing these past few months. So be excited for new content. And if you want to join the meetup, the bit.ly right there, bit.ly/KDP_events. So make sure you get that URL. And so something new that we brought today that you might have seen or heard is we're doing the Bring a Buddy campaign. It's pretty simple. If you brought a buddy today, a friend, to watch this workshop, you've been maybe following Kintone, and you said, hey, you should check this out. On our post-event survey, if you brought someone, you can actually claim them on the survey by recording down their email on the questionnaire. Make sure you do that, and make sure if you're the buddy who got brought, your host, you write down their email that they will be providing. And so your host will get +1 to the raffle, to the $25 gift card that we offer for filling out this post-event survey. So it's just incentive for you guys to really share with your friends and anyone in your network that you think might be interested with Kintone's workshops.
We're done today, and you can feel free to leave at this point. And we really appreciate the time that you spent with us. You could have spent your time in a lot of other ways, and you chose to spend it with us. We don't take that for granted, and thank you.